Thank you. So I want to call the meeting to order of the MWPA Executive Committee for October 6th. The first item is the roll call. Martina, would you do the roll call, please?
Absolutely. Member Goins? Member Goins?
Here.
Member Hilliard? Looks like she is absent currently, but may join after. Member Kurtz?
Here.
Member McMillan?
Here.
And President Rodoni.
Present. Thank you. Anyone wish to make any agenda adjustments at this point? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move then to item 4, which is open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the executive committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of this committee. Please be advised that pursuant to the government code, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take any action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments will be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your phone during the meeting and mute your microphones when not speaking. Anyone of the public wish to address us today? Martina?
If there are any members of the public wishing to comment on an agenda item, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And I do not see any hands for public comment, sir.
All right, thank you. Doesn't look like we have a lot of attendees this morning.
No.
That's very good. So item 5 is the executive officers report. The verbal report by Director Mark Brown.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen and make sure that I have it set up properly for you all. Please tell me you see the full screen rather than the notes version of it. Perfect. So I think you all know that fire activity, not just in the county, but statewide is blessedly low. I've looked over the last few days to see if we have any initial attack activity throughout the state, and no, we don't. And I also looked at our fuels for, I like to look at our 10-hour and 100-hour fuels, and they're trending above average right now. So that's really good news as we go into our fall weather patterns and get the offshore flows. However, it's good news for a short period of time. I don't want to say it's going to happen, but it can happen that the winds come, dries everything out, and we can be back into the types of fires that we've seen in October. We're very happy to announce, and we've reached out to all of our member agencies, that we are going to be extending chipper days by 1 month and still stay within budget. So fantastic news. Great job by our chipper days folks to be able to squeeze in an additional month. And so that's going to be 1 week in each of our 5 zones. And so Stephen from Chipper Days has already reached out to the member agencies to start plugging away at that. Another success that we're having, but it's also a challenge, is grants. We are just about ready to exhaust all of the available grant funds for the Ross Valley. When we had the set amount for all of our grants for the entire JPA, we used the percent values that we used to determine how much is 80% for core and applied that to our grants. So each zone had a bucket of money that was available consistent with their percentage of revenue that they generate. So in the Ross Valley, we're essentially 2 home hardening projects away from exhausting the Ross Valleys. Santa Fe's another zone that is having a ton of success in awarding grants, and they are 50% through their budget, and we are a quarter through our budget year. So I'm working on a staff report to present some options to the finance committee so that we could talk about it at the finance committee to create some solutions that we can present to the board at the October board of directors meeting. And then that brings up the finance committee. I've been a flurry of emails this morning with Ann, Elisa, and myself closing out the books for 21-22. And so we could see exactly what the rollover for 22-23 is. And I think we're going to come out higher in our success rate in completing projects than we had originally anticipated. So that's really great news, and it just shows the amount of effort all of our member agencies are putting forth towards our initiatives. IBHS, I've been talking to you about their home preparedness, our wildfire prepared home designation, and them using our inspections for rather than them coming in inspecting. We had a great meeting last week. We've outlined 6 steps on how we can get to where we are now and where we want to be. Those 6 steps include training. We want to look at a focus and a diversified sample size so that they can QA that. That then we'll start doing dual inspections with their folks, working with our folks so they can QA our folks. Then the overall quality assurance, which will be ongoing, create a mechanism for our reports to automatically go over to IBHS. We also have to work through some privacy issues on that to make sure that we aren't violating our privacy policy. And then go to where we are the only ones doing the inspections, and IBHS will have ongoing quality assurance to make sure that we're doing everything up to snuff. And then finally, Anne has been working with several people, including our new Grizzly Corps fellows, to set up new site visits. And so our next one is October 11th at the end of Greenwood Avenue. It is a shaded fuel break that was funded by both MWPA and a FEMA grant. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Perfect. And that's the end of my report. And I'll take any questions.
Thanks, Mark. Any executive committee question, member question? Yeah, Julie.
Mark, could you just elaborate on the fire that took place, was it last week on Kite Hill in Mill Valley?
Thank you for reminding me. I really did want to talk about that. While it was small, and it should have stayed small because of the weather, every fire that we have is an excellent opportunity for the firefighters and law enforcement to train, and it's also an opportunity for our members of our public to get used to the type of actions they should be taking. So the fire did remain small, and I think an underutilized tactic that's used in evacuation management is shelter in place, and they opted to do shelter in place on this fire. So the PD and fire got into unified command and decided shelter in place was the appropriate action. And they sent notifications and knocked on doors and said, hey, you're fine in your house. We want you to stay in your house, close your windows, close your doors, stay in your house, and we'll let you know when you can go out. And it worked great. And shelter in place really works well because that allows for the ingress of our fire resources.
Great. Anyone else with questions? Yeah, Rachel, go ahead.
Can I just ask a little bit more? I know we're going to talk about the grant and the finance committee, but in terms of that the overall discussion is we've used the grant and there's still more work to be done.
Yeah, so I have Maria prepared a spreadsheet for me, and essentially we started the year with $562,969 available for grants. Through the spending that we've had so far, we have $298,000 remaining. So, and like I said, the Central Marin and is only 2 home hardening projects away from exhausting its funding. Santa Fe has been doing very well also, but some of the other zones aren't using as much, and we have pending applications still in the Ross Valley. I mean, in the double digits of pending applications in the Ross Valley. So I think it's important to find a way to move the funding from either one of the zones into the Ross Valley, or consider, you know what, we're JPA, we're one big giant jurisdiction. Let's just lump all the money together in one big pot and then use our tracking mechanisms to know where they landed. And so when we do the end of year analysis of where we spent Measure C money in regard to the 80% of the core funds must be spent in a zone that it was acquired in, we can do that on the back end. We were just striving to hit that goal from the front end, but that strategy isn't working. So we'll have to come to the board and seek direction to see if we want to lump it all together and have one big happy pool or some other possible ideas.
Great. So that was really helpful. One of the things as we move this conversation forward to the board, maybe we can just clarify that this is what type of grants, because we have so many different types of grants that are in the mix. And I wasn't, that was the part of I was thinking there was a different grant. I was thinking these
Oh,
were
okay.
government grants or, some other type of grant.
Right.
I wasn't sure. So this is really helpful to understand.
Yeah, it's the resident grants for D-Space and home hardening.
Got it.
And actually today, Maria is submitting a grant to the U.S. Forest Service for home hardening, so that if we are awarded that grant, we'll be pushing that into those programs.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Bruce, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Mark, really briefly, one item that you did not mention that I'm hoping you will pull into the October 20th meeting is the fact that we have launched the Marin Woody Biomass Utilization and Greenhouse Gas Assessment project has launched. And we've hired the consultants, we've met with the consultants, and that they are conducting outreach. And I know that you and Ann both will be, I sick them on you, which is, I know you guys do a great job, but Tad Mason of TSS Consultants and others are working. So just to let folks know what's coming, that there will be some questions being asked about our management proposed activities, our historic forest resource management stuff, biomass that we've moved, where it's currently going, and they'll be looking at opportunities to optimize benefits for the community and greenhouse gas benefits. But I think just to keep the awareness, Mark, I would appreciate if you could, if you're consenting to add that to the briefing.
Well, we actually have you guys are giving a presentation right up front at our October board meeting.
Yeah, I don't see that on the agenda. We can talk about that when we get to the agenda.
Yeah, our apologies if it's not in there. That was our intent to have that on the agenda as a presentation.
Okay, thank you.
It's in the education section.
Is it? I might have
Down
missed it.
buried. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
and-
yeah, thanks, Julie.
Yeah, Mark, I was only going to add about the funding, grant funding issue. I think the intent of the ballot language was to have the funding, the dollars distributed equally, but not necessarily the programs. Hopefully that makes sense. That the programs don't all have to be balanced, and that may be a way that we can address some shortfalls in some districts for some funding by looking at overall funding, not just is the program balanced. Does that make
You're
sense?
100% right, and I think that is how we balance it out.
Okay, very good. All right, let's go to the public now, please, Martina.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, please press *9 in the reactions to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And we do not have any current hands. And I also just wanted to update that I still do not see Member Hilliard in the attendees or the panelist area.
Thank
And
you.
if I could, Dennis, before we move on, just a quick shout out for Stephen Keese. I see him in the audience. He wrote a really good letter to the editor describing the difference between shaded fuel breaks and power line clearing. I think that's a very important distinction for our public to understand. So Stephen, thank you very much for pushing that out.
Yep, thanks, Mark. So we're going to move to item 6, the consent calendar. The opportunity for public comment on the consent calendar will occur prior to the committee's discussion of the consent calendar. The committee may approve the entire consent calendar with one action, or any alternative items on the consent calendar may be removed by any committee member, staff member, for a separate discussion and vote. So I'll now take public comment on the consent calendar since there's only one item on it. Martina?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the consent calendar, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep,
Okay,
all set? Okay, thank you. So the one item is the minutes of the September 1st, 2022 Executive Committee meeting, and looking for a motion and a second for those.
Motion to approve a consent calendar item.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion going, second Kurt. Can we have the roll call, please?
Certainly, Member Goins,
Aye.
Member Hilliard is still currently absent. Member McMillan,
Aye.
Member Kurtz,
Aye.
and President Rodoni.
Aye, thank you very much. So now we're going to move to item 7, committee reports. This is-
Yes, and I received an email from the COC yesterday and they had nothing to report. So they asked for me to let you know that they had nothing to report.
Nothing additional to report.
Correct.
Very good. So any comments about that from executive committee members? Quickly, any public comment on that?
Any members of the public wishing to speak, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. No, we do not have any comments, sir.
All right, thank you. So item 8 is discussion items. Citizens Oversight Committee recruitment of 3 positions for annual expiration and 1 current member for a total of 4 positions. Mark?
Yes, we just wanted to get your feedback to see if the route that we were intending to go meet your guys' needs, and that is we now have actually a pretty well-oiled process for this recruitment, and we have 3 positions that should be regularly on the docket, but we also have an additional. The tables that I showed you were the actual original COC members, and just so that we could show the stagger. So Larry Chu, Stephen Keese, and Carolyn Longstreth, who represented Carolyn to West, Stephen, a civic organization, and Larry Chu, Central Zone. They were the 1-year assignments. Larry Chu continued, Stephen and Carolyn did not. Carolyn was replaced by Jennifer Howard. Stephen Keese was replaced by Michael Wara. So now we have the 3 seats that were slated for a 2-year term, and that was Novato, which is Rebecca Suggs, Environmental, Larry Minikis, and Taxpayer, Kingston Cole. But we also had Michael Wara, after his 1 year in the COC, just with his commitments at Stanford. He just got promoted at Stanford. He just doesn't have the time to commit to the COC, and he doesn't think it's fair to the other COC members to burden them with what he cannot do. So we would be looking for 3 3-year terms and 1 2-year term. And like I said, we have a well-oiled process. We just turn on a web page that's currently off to start the recruitments in November. We can also, we intend to reach out to people within the public who have previously applied and invite them to apply again. And then we always like to have our board members give us any recommendations of who we can reach out to apply as well, especially for you, Bruce, since the Novato is going to be one of the seats that we're looking at. And then we intend just to put it on consent to say that we're doing that. And then President Rodoni will look to you to create an ad hoc subcommittee for December for selection so that we can make a recommendation to the board at the December board meeting. With that, I'll take questions and suggestions.
Yeah, questions. Rachel?
Southern Marin, is Max Pray is listed there now that he's on council? Is that, who's in that spot?
John McCauley. And
Okay.
so John has 1 year left on that term. So
Okay, great. Thank you.
thank you for clarifying.
Other executive committee member questions? Bruce?
Yeah, just a quick question, and I should know this, having been in Dennis's shoes for 2 cycles now in convening the committee, but is it possible for an existing member that's terming out to reapply? And
Yes.
be chosen?
They could do it. They can have 2 consecutive terms. And then theoretically, they can have two consecutive terms, have 1 term off, and then reapply for another term after that 1
Okay,
term.
yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate being clear on that. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, let's look for the public comments on this item.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, we do not. Oh, it looks like we do have a hand raised from a Mr. Stephen Keese. And you should be able to speak now,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, good. Can you hear me? Yeah.
We got you,
can.
Stephen.
All right, good, thank you. I'd just like to encourage all of you to think of community members that you know who might be good members of the Citizens Oversight Committee. If they're not otherwise engaged but are interested, it would be a good way to learn about MWPA and related organizations. And if they're willing to do the effort, if Citizens Oversight Committee can bring any sort of talents, as long as they're willing to pay attention and engage in the discussions and ask questions. So it's an opportunity for all of us to look around and maybe recruit other people. Good people. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Anyone else, Martina?
And if there are any other members of the public wishing to speak, please go ahead and press *9 or raise your hand in the reactions. And then you would press *6 to unmute yourself. And we do not have any other hands, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to bring you back to the committee for any further discussion or feedback to staff. There's no action required. Yes, Julie.
Just a comment, Mark, when you do the staff report for the board, I think people are a little confused about the table because
Yeah.
you use the word current representation. So maybe you can tinker with that and maybe show the original and then the current would be maybe more helpful.
I think you're right.
Thank you.
Mark, it might be helpful to just include who were the committee members the last time that was reviewed.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
You mean the ad hoc subcommittee members,
Yeah,
right?
ad hoc subcommittee.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
you bet.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to item 9, which is Board of Directors Agenda Review. Mark?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. You'll see that we have a presentation about the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break in this the San Anselmo Cedars campus. And the executive director would like to have an opportunity to say thank you. We're going to have some before and after pictures, but we also want to inform the board of a very successful site visit that we had with the San Anselmo Open Space Council that Ann led. So, and it really validates the process that Ann has established for the way we do our work that is essentially above reproach. We are doing it the right way. And so, and I think that site visit just built a ton of trust and confidence that we're going to do this work in the right way. So that's why we wanted to bring that to the board. And then Bruce, we do have the biomass as an information item. And then my apologies, I'm not sure how I missed this, but I did. And that is to have the end of year closing as an agenda item that'll be in the board of directors agenda as an action item following our October 11th finance committee. So the finance committee will review the recommendations from staff, give us any further recommendations, and then we can bring it to the board for approval. And then this is a new item that I already discussed really quick, and the need to look at how we're distributing grant funds will be added as an action item as well. Again, following the finance committee and receiving feedback from the finance committee.
Great. Rachel, question for Mark?
Yeah, can we use this opportunity to do a different name for the Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break on the agenda? Maybe it's AKA Ross Valley, but I don't, because we haven't really officially done that,
Yeah.
but it's, I don't know. It seems like it's a good opportunity to put that out there to publicly talk about it.
I think, yeah, I agree. And to kind of extend what Rachel's saying is that we've received comments and confusion or concern about the term. And let's start with shaded fuel break. Some of the areas that we're doing this work in, there was never shade to begin with. So calling it a shaded fuel break is actually disingenuous. And then other people have an idea of fuel break and they're thinking bare earth, which is not what we're doing. Or they also think that we think that it's going to stop a fire, and then they automatically say, well, 6 lanes of freeway didn't stop the Tubbs fire. So we constantly run into that. And then we also run into, well, why is it just a Ross Valley? You know,
Right.
what about my town? And so we're thinking of names like the Marin Fuel Reduction Zone or Marin Fuel Reduction Zones. And then so fuel reduction zone, I think really describes what we're doing better. And saying it's Marin Fuel Reduction Zone shows that we're doing it over the entire county. And then each project, it could be like Marin Fuel Reduction Zone, Novato, for the upcoming work that we'll be doing in Novato. Marin Fuel Reduction Zone, Ross Valley, Marin Fuel Reduction Zone, San Rafael. So Ann and I can work to add that to start socializing that name change in the presentation for next week or 2 weeks from now.
Julie?
Yeah, I have an article coming out in the IJ really soon about shaded fuel breaks. Would you like me to try to change it?
Yeah, how about you and I connect offline and we can
Okay.
look at that together, because I think that could be a good way to start socializing that name change.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Bruce?
Yeah, wrap me in on this discussion, please. On your article, Julie and Mark, this discussion, I've advocated for decades using the descriptor strategic fuel reduction zones as opposed to random fuel reduction. Fuel reduction is something, but strategic implies that we are being very purposeful and very thoughtful and clear that we're prioritizing certain assets at risk. So Mark, I would, and Julie, both, I think it's a critical descriptor that we shouldn't discount the use of. And I do like fuel reduction zones. So yes, but wrap me in. I've been doing this for a few decades, so I want to get I want to keep it current on the lingo.
I think in a lot of the work plan materials, we refer to it as shaded fuel break, not only for Ross Valley, but in Novato and Southern Marin. And so it has broader implications than just the greater Ross Valley shaded fuel break. As my article also will need to be modified, not just for the Ross Valley portion, but that's fine.
Could I just add the S-freeze sort of works? So strategic, did I do it right? Fuel reduction zones,
S-freeze?
S-freeze?
Yeah.
It's all about the acronym.
Well, I quite frankly, I get tired of trying to spell out the acronym of the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break and remember what it was. So
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it is I mean, I don't really have a strong preference on the name as long as it addresses all these different issues that we've been talking about. Because I do think it is important as we've just started this really in the beginning of this project. Now's the time to do it. And all the concerns that Mark brought up are really, because people have asked me, like, is that just in Ross Valley? Is that what is this about? So I think the name and you internally, I mean, the groups internally can stick to whatever, but I think outwardly, it's really helpful to have a name that actually says what we're doing.
yeah.
Bruce?
Yeah, just real quick then. I was in the Novato Fire Board district meeting yesterday in which this project was described. And Mark, I didn't bring present the conversation that we had that Julia had just suggested about the name changes, but are you speaking to the ATC or the ops folks, or should I as a director be talking to Bill and Mike Sweezy, myself, which I'm happy to do, but
Ann and I will be,
because we're actually marketing this stuff right now.
Ann and I will are working on that. We'll work on that. We're still this is really still in the early stages of that name change. And I think we have a meeting next week with Mike on this project.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Any other questions about the agenda?
I did want to inform you, sir, that we do have a hand raised in the public comments area.
Okay. So seeing no other directors' hands up, let's go to the public.
And Mr. Keys, if you'd like to go ahead and provide your comment. Oh, looks like the hand went down. I will lower mine. So if there are any other members of the public wishing to speak, please press *9 or raise your hand in the reactions. Okay, sir. So it looks like we actually don't have any public.
All right,
comment.
thank you. I'm going to bring you back to the committee for any further discussion. I'll provide feedback to staff. All right, I think this is a good discussion that we had today, though, and that will help lead us going forward. Because it's kind of evolving, because I could
Yeah.
see where something around vegetation management or maintenance could play into that description too. So, all right, thank you. So we're going to move on to item 10 then, which is informational item. Any committee members have informational items for the committee to discuss?
I'll just quickly,
Go
if
ahead,
I
Rachel.
can, add thank you to Mark for coming to San Rafael City Council and to encourage others if he hasn't made the rounds to everybody. It might be good just to keep an inventory of where you've been so people know, because I think, 17 of them, it's a lot to go around, but it's really great to have the update.
And I think, I did a lot at the very beginning, but I think as we've matured and people have learned more, I'm seeing a little bit more value with these meetings, going to the council and boards. I went to iPod 3 weeks ago, and it ended up being a really informative discussion.
Great.
All right, anyone else with informational items? Seeing none, any committee members want to request something for future agendas? All right, seeing no comments, I think it's time that we move from this open session to closed session. We have one item in closed session related to executive officer labor negotiation.
Thank
So
you.
you all have the link, I believe, and then we'll
Yes,
return
thank
here
you for
to,
sending that out.
yeah, thank you,
You
Megan.
need to do public comment on that first, Bruce. I
Thank
mean,
you.
Dennis.
Yeah, no, thank you. So any public comment on the closed session item, which is executive committee meeting and talking about the executive officer's labor negotiations?
Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on the closed session item only? Please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand if you're joining by phone, and then *6 to unmute and mute yourself. And sir, we do not have any public comments on the closed session item.
Okay. So I'll see you all in closed session, and then we'll return here with the open link to make any announcements. See you soon. Okay, good to see you all. So we're back into open session from closed session, and we have no reportable action to report. So I just want to note that all the executive committee members are here with the exception of Catherine Helder, who was absent for the entire day's session. Anything else? All right, we're adjourned. So nice to see you all and see you in a couple weeks.